In an industry obsessed with the future, what does it take to transform a 65-year-old company? So many companies cling to the past. They cling to their legacy systems, their old ways of doing things. But not here, not at Cooper Standard. No, this $2.7 billion company with 22,000 employees operating in 20 different countries is preparing itself for the future. Joining me at the mic today is the chairman and CEO of Cooper Standard, Jeff Edwards. And we are going to be diving into leadership and culture and looking at what makes not only the past, but the future exciting. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Jen. I appreciate it. Look forward to the conversation.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Jeff, I know that culture is important to you, but why?
I think it's the company. At the end of the day, it's not the sign on the building, right? It's the people within it. And I think at Cooper Standard, we've got 65 years and counting in the automotive industry. And you kind of have to earn your way every day. And you have to be very convinced that you love a fast-paced environment. You also have to be convinced that every day has got to be better than what you just did and be okay with that. So to me, that's always starts with the folks that come to work for us in our plants. You mentioned we're in 20 countries. We have 22,000 employees. About 18,000 of those show up in our factories every single day. And so if you don't have something that kind of ties that all together, what do you have? And so our customers have become very accustomed to how our people deliver, how they keep getting better. If they have a problem, they own it and fix it. That's how I would describe cultures in successful companies, right? You speak the truth, you say what you mean, you do what you say, and that's us.
Yeah, it's not rocket science, is it? But yet it's very difficult, really understanding culture and getting at the root of culture. Because, Jeff, you and I both know in this industry, decades ago, we all ran with a strong command and control culture. The orders came from the top and they went down the ranks and down to the shop floor, and there really wasn't a lot of discussion or empowerment. And now that's evolving. We're talking about more of an authentic leadership, servant leadership type of model. That transformation, how have you seen that transformation here at Cooper Standard?
We really spend an awful lot of time talking about leadership. We talk about what's important and what isn't. We also talk about what's acceptable and what isn't from a leadership point of view. And I've found it's not only about educating those that are in leadership positions. If you educate everyone that comes to work, then they know what it looks like, but they know what it doesn't look like. And so it holds us all accountable. And I think it's a lot better than one person shouting orders from the rooftop, especially when your rooftop has to span 20 countries and a lot more languages than just that. The culture is certainly, in my opinion, built from the shop floor and then understood in the boardroom and supported. And that's where it comes together, in my opinion, is on the shop floor. And we've talked a lot about what the shop floor is. So for us, it's not a way to the parking lot. It's where our passion and our performance to support the customer is actually delivered by all fronts, whether you're our supply base, whether you're employees in the factory, whether you're the engineers, whether you're the leadership team, whether you're the community that we enjoy being part of, you all show up there.
Yeah.
And so how did you do? And do the customers enjoy that interaction? And do they continue to vote with the purchase orders? Because ultimately they need to. And the culture within our factories really is a reflection of our entire company, and it should be. And if it isn't, then that's probably something that needs improved.
Yeah. Years ago, I remember sitting in executive conference rooms when culture was just that thing that HR did. Remember those days years ago? Nobody really understood the significance of it, how it binds all of your people together. It's how you make decisions. It's how you operate. It's all of that. It's the glue that holds it all together. So tell me a little bit about how that works at Cooper Standard, because clearly it's not an HR thing.
No, it's not. And I think our global leadership team really owns the approach that we use to run the business. I think we're probably like most, right? We have a vision statement, we have a purpose, we have our values, but that isn't a paper that hangs on the wall. That's what's in the hearts and minds of our leadership team because they own it. It's in the hearts and minds of our employees because they understood it when they accepted a job within our company. And every day is something that we work on. And we don't change it a lot. I will tell you over a 13-year period, I can speak to that. We've adjusted a couple things. We've tweaked some language. But overall, it's still about delivering for the 5 stakeholders that we have. And when you think about our customers, you think about our shareholders, our employees, the communities that we live and work, and our supply base. That's the 5 folks that if they're all receiving what they need, not everybody gets everything that they need, but if they're receiving what they need and they believe that every day is better than the previous one, then I think it's working. If it isn't, then you probably should figure out what you want to tweak and adjust and make it better. But it really has to be in the hearts and minds of all the employees. That's the most important thing I could use to answer the question.
No, I agree with you. And I think that culture is directly related to the speed that we so desperately crave in this industry. Mm-hmm. We're always talking about now speed. It's speed of product design. It's speed of producing the product. It's speed of making decisions. No longer can we stay in the dark ages with all the silo decision-making type processes that take forever. You've got to embrace empowerment. And I believe that culture is something that can either strangle that. If you've got a bad culture, you are not going to have the speed that you so desperately want and need in this industry. But if you have a good culture, then that's going to allow decisions and processes and information to flow much faster. Would you agree with that?
I think culture is a big part of it. I think speed, I think accuracy is important. But clearly, those definitions continue to evolve and change, and now are changing rapidly because depending on which customer we're talking about and which powertrain we're talking about and which market we're talking about, speed is defined much different today. The timeline that we used to discuss were 3 or 4 or 5 years, right? You had to develop. Now we're talking about months that you have to develop product and get it into the market. And so again, I would say the mindset of the organization has to be lined up there, right? This isn't something you can just ultimately say, we're going to go do this. It has to be part of your process. I would say this, our tools are also much better. If you think about the investments that we've made in our business, both on the engineering, the manufacturing, finance, program management, we've spent literally hundreds of millions of dollars within our infrastructure, IT infrastructure, financial infrastructure, to really provide our employees with what you just said, information that's available real time and much faster. What's really going to be cool about that, in my opinion, is as we go forward and AI becomes part of our daily work habit and becomes a tool that we use to make our company better, faster, more accurate. Yeah. Now that we have the data and our employees are using that data in ways, we're no longer Excel spreadsheets and napkins, I think is also part of the cultural evolution and revolution now that's going to take place. So that requires people to really buy in to how they're going to do things differently going forward. And if you don't have a culture and if folks aren't willing to do that, you can conquer any mountain, but when you turn around and nobody's there with you, it makes for a pretty long day. So I think culture can be part of virtually everything that you do, especially this continuous improvement, lightning speed changes, the evolution that's occurring in the industry. Is, I know everybody says the next 10 years are going to be more change than we've experienced in the past 100. I agree with that. I would say maybe it's the next 5 years.
I was going to say, I think it's the next 5 now.
Are going to be faster than anything that we've seen in the last 100. But anyway, I think the key is your folks, right? It doesn't matter what country you come from. It doesn't matter where you've worked in the past. If you can buy into what we're doing here, I think that's part of a winning team. We're a competitive group in the auto industry. If you're not into competition, you're not into speed, you probably ought to get into greeting cards or something.
Yes.
I don't know. But it starts with that. You can't hire folks that don't want to be part of the environment that you and I are talking about. I think it goes without saying, though, that the plant managers, I think in every automotive company, and the engineers that support them, they're really the backbone. And they have to be part of that cultural understanding and belief, or it doesn't just show up when you want it. It has to be really designed and manufactured in and then supported by your leadership, and in our case, by a board of directors that buy into this stuff, right? Yeah. That's how it happens. You can't go forward and wish for it. You have to do it the right way.
Talking about leadership and leadership traits, you've taken a look at the 21 traits of authentic leadership. Give me some of those traits that really resonate with the culture here at Cooper Standard. What would they be?
Yeah, I would tell you that we all talk about character and transparency. We also talk about integrity, and we discuss those a lot. I would tell you here, resiliency.
Yeah.
If you think about the last, half a decade or maybe even a decade now, probably a half a decade, it's required, I think, a sense of resiliency at all levels, from the boardroom to the lunchroom, as we say. But at the end of the day, you also like winning. And I think that companies that can figure out how to stay focused, to do things the right way for the right reasons, and have a resolve to get it done are the ones that are going to be successful. And those also usually are led by people in all leadership roles that are approachable, that have empathy, that have the ability to see things through the eyes of others. Because when you're going through the type of crisis that the world and the industry has been faced with, that's not simple. And it's probably not something that most people have ever walked through.
Yeah.
And so you don't necessarily need to pretend to have all the answers when you're doing that, but you better be resilient, and you better have resolve, and you better have integrity and character to behave in those tough times in even better ways than you did when things were a little bit easier.
I like what you just said about the ability to see things through the eyes of others. I think that's an area that we've struggled with in this industry in the past. And that empathy goes right along with that. Instead of, again, command and control, taking control, barking out orders, saying, no, this way or the highway, but really taking time to understand all stakeholders that are involved in a decision and seeing things through other people's eyes, and then making a good qualified decision quickly. That's really an important characteristic that we need from leaders in this industry.
I think if you're going to be followed as a leader in the industry, you certainly better have that skill.
Yeah.
And I call it a skill because some people say you're born with it. I think that if you were lucky enough, okay. But most people acquire it over time and through experience. And I've always found that whether you're meeting with folks in New York City talking about bank deals, or whether you're talking to your employees that happen to come to work in your plants, or whether you're managing on a quarterly basis your board of directors, the ability to be approachable, the ability to listen, the ability to be transparent in those conversations, and to be consistent regardless of what's flying around you, I think is how you get people to trust and buy in, and then ultimately line up. And in this industry, if it were as easy to line everybody up and march in a certain direction, many people could probably do that.
Yes.
But what you find is that things change on a regular basis, and your ability to change quickly when you're talking about tens of thousands of employees around the world, that probably is a little more of the secret sauce that has to exist within your four walls as a company, and within the framework and the trust that the leadership has built, not only with each other, but with the employees that have to take the orders, if you will, and go do something about it and make it happen. I will tell you, there isn't an earnings call that goes by where I don't shout out to our plant managers. These guys come to work every day, and they're responsible for managing 85% of the employee base. And so if you really want to talk about leadership, the room isn't big enough for us to bring them here and have this conversation, but they're truly the ones that are on the front line of leadership and are doing such a fantastic job inside Cooper Standard. And then you talk about the directors of our engineering group and the directors within our functions. So these are the people that are really doing the work, and really we owe a lot to. You don't survive 65 years in the automotive industry. You don't even survive the last 6 or 7 years that has been our industry and our world without what I just described. You have to have people that are willing to commit and are willing to go make it happen, aren't going to run for cover when things get difficult. And I'm really proud of that aspect. We have people that have been here a long time, not 65 years of it, but a long time. And clearly that sets us apart. People want to work here. People enjoy working here. And when we need folks to come join us, we usually have a line around the building. And that's not because of the sign.
It's because of the culture. What do you look for in people that you hire? What's the DNA of a Cooper Standard associate? What's that look like?
Yeah, I think you have to have the right work ethic. You have to be real. You have to care. You have to be a teammate in addition to a leader. There isn't a leader in the company, me included, that doesn't have to be a good teammate.
Yeah.
And so you got to be both. And I think within the industry, we tend to bring people in and help them and teach them and provide them access to skills that comes with, as they experience what we're talking about, we really put tools in their hands to help them and make them better and ultimately the company better. And I think when you invest in your employees the way we do, whether we're talking about China or Colorado, we tend to provide each of them an opportunity to do that. The other thing, and I always say this, we spend a lot of time talking about our vision and our values and our mission. Every quarter I do an all-employee meeting that gets archived, so you don't have to be awake at 11 p.m. in Asia to listen to it live. You can listen to it at your convenience. But we always start with that. And folks will say to me all the time, I notice that you use that in every meeting. Are you worried about it being redundant? And I always say no, because we have new folks that are joining us, because that's the way the world works. And then we also want to continue to make sure that it's heard and it's emphasized that truly we make car parts. We're privileged to be part of that industry, but that isn't who we are.
Yeah, that's really quite a statement around culture.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears and talk about organization structure. I've been in this industry a long time, and I've worked for every possible conceivable type of org structure there is. You'll see it go from decentralized to centralized functions to regional leadership, all different kinds of matrix structures, product structures. You've gone through quite a transformation at Cooper Standard. Tell me a little bit about that transformation and the drivers behind that.
Yeah, I think in most companies, one agreement you'll find for most senior leadership teams or CEO is that you probably pick one for the particular period of time that you're in, whatever that is. And what you know is that about as fast as you put that one out, there probably is another one coming in 2 or 3 years that's going to obsolete that and be what's needed.
So true.
So I don't get too hung up on what that X's and O's, if you will, happen to be. But I will, in this case, talk about what we did in January 2 years ago. Yeah. We went to a P&L, really a strong P&L business for our fluid business and for our sealing business. Mm-hmm. And then we have a smaller industrial specialty group that we have a president. So we have 3 presidents that are in charge of the P&L for those 3 particular businesses. And then we basically put lineups or rosters in place to support what they do on a regular basis. So call them the mini CEOs of those 3 product organizations and those 3 P&Ls. So they're in front of the board talking about their 3-year business plans. They're talking about how it's going to grow. They're talking about the level of profitability. They're talking about the capital required to support the growth. It's really an empowering organization model. It's also very flat. And it's probably the most cost-effective model that we've used. And so if you think about what I just said, there's an obvious reason why the last 4 or 5 years, the industry required whatever was flat and whatever was low cost and whatever would get decisions done quick. And so that's why we find ourselves in this particular model. I'm really proud of the team. And that's another example, right? You have 20,000 employees that Christmas 2 years ago were walking to an organization that they had been walking to probably for about 3 years. And then up goes an announcement that we're going to change that. When you come back from holiday, this is the new organization structure. And in some companies, people would be like, okay, what did we do wrong? In this company, it's about, okay, how's that going to help us do better? And that's basically what they did. They just took it and ran with it. And here we are. We're back to performing financially and otherwise the way we should be. Our customers are proud of that fact as well, because ultimately a stronger Cooper Standard is a stronger automaker. And we all believe that. And I think the entire supply base believes it. But again, we have to be careful when we talk about an org chart. The names in the boxes that really are the difference makers. And I will say we pay particular attention to the names in the boxes, especially at the top of the charts, because ultimately we want people that get this, right? Have to understand the culture and the values and what we expect. We know what you make, but how you do it and who you are as you do it here is equally important to the results. It's not just the results, it's how you get the results.
Yeah, and I think in any organization, doesn't matter, whatever way you draw the matrix, because I'm sure there's some shared functions that go across these businesses, procurement maybe, supply chain,
all that.
HR, right?
You're looking for scale.
So you've got some people that say the sealing systems person wants this and the fluid person wants this and my functional boss wants this. But at the end of the day, it's about people figuring it out together. What is best for the business? And so many times I see people fighting, whether it's a dotted line or a solid line in a matrix organization. It doesn't matter. It's about the team coming together to understand what the business needs and solving that issue. And are you going to have a perfect job description or a perfect org structure that will help you do that? No, you're not. You're going to have to work together and figure it out. And I think that's something that a lot of companies miss. Again, it comes back to culture, doesn't it?
It does, and it's leadership. At the end of the day, there are certain cultures that don't do well with dotted lines. That's what you hear a lot, right? And I've always found that if you have the right leaders, then they can explain that and they can make it work. If you don't have the right leaders, then typically there's always reasons why something doesn't work. We tend to talk about our global leadership team as the group that comes together each and every day, and then each and every month, and each and every quarter, and each and every year. And they're ultimately held accountable and they're responsible. And we don't have scholarships for that group. You earn your way in and you earn your way to stay. We all are that way. There are no guarantees. And so what's going to help you be the most successful? In my opinion, it's the culture and the glue and the fit that team has. And if they fit well together and they're getting results and they're winning, they tend to be together a long time. They can get results, and if they don't fit, then they tend not to be together for a longer period of time. And you also tend to have more of the discussions that you mentioned, right? Why things don't work rather than how are we going to make it work. And we're really proud of that group. It's the smallest it's ever been inside our company as we sit here today. The smallest global leadership team we've had because the organization is the flattest and the P&Ls are very streamlined. That's serving us well. The plants within Cooper Standard also are pretty lined up to that P&L structure. So we don't have a lot of complexity associated with cross lines and so forth. And we hire adults. So when you go into the room, they tend to behave like adults. And I'm really proud of
They don't
really
play
proud
games?
Of that aspect.
They don't backstab each other and play games with each other?
I never use the word never in anything that I do, but I do think that it's probably one of the things that I'm most proud of, that they care about each other, they care about the company, they care about the results, and they care about how we get those results. And I think that's a consistent approach that we've had a long time. And it really is a culture that I believe will be here long after the current leadership team hands the baton off to the next one. And I think that's how I always think about building it. I try to think about leaving it better than we found it. But even more than that, building it so that it'll ultimately have foundations to continue to build on for the next 65 years.
Yeah. This is a point in time where you are celebrating 65 years, and it's clear that you've been able to retain the good parts of the DNA of the legacy company and also transform for the future, which is not easy to do. But Jeff, as you look into the future, what excites you about the future?
I think, first of all, the auto industry itself is exciting. You think about the evolution that we're in the middle of right now, right, with powertrain. So we're talking about ICE vehicles, hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles. And probably in 10 years, 50% of them will be ICE and the other 50% are going to be hybrid and electric. I don't know what percentage of hybrid and what percentage of electric, but I think 50% of the entire market will be one or the other. That's exciting. That's change. That's an evolution that requires amazing communication from the customer expectations through our factories. But change can be exciting too. Some people are afraid of it. I think in the right company and in the right culture, it's exciting because you can actually differentiate yourself as a supplier in an environment that has that type of rapid change. We talked about speed. We talked about accuracy. We talked about having people that really care and want to build relationships with their customers and the supply base. These are all things that are going to be required to win and to be competitive and to make sure that the customer feels that you're worthy of the next purchase order. And I think they always prefer to give it to somebody they like versus somebody they don't like.
As a former purchasing person, I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. Those relationships are so critical in our industry. And my background is just a lot of supply chain and purchasing in my background. And I was brought up to basically beat the supplier over the head. So it's wonderful to hear you talk about the relationships with the suppliers. And we have to nurture those relationships because they're not just suppliers anymore, are they? They have to contribute to what our products look like in the future. They really are partners, a word that we've used and abused over the years. But we have to recognize how important and critical those relationships are.
Yeah, I think for us, it starts with being able to do the basic things. Yeah. And so we really pride ourselves on how we run our factories and the safety record in our factories and how day in and day out from a quality performance, we're doing what the customer expects us to do and that we don't create issues with those basic things. And then we quickly pivot and say, okay, how are we going to differentiate ourselves? And that's typically where innovation comes into play. And when you think about the transformation that's occurring now within the powertrain, that's our space, right? So our fluid business has an opportunity to really innovate in ways that nobody has ever innovated, because all of a sudden you need a hybrid electric vehicle. And nobody talked about hybrids other than small volumes. Now we're talking about potentially 50% of the market being either electric or hybrid. And so with us, how do we innovate for our customers? How do we do a much better job of providing them an overall system that's a lot lower cost, but a lot more efficient? Probably they spend a lot less money procuring all those parts, but our purchase order is probably higher than it's ever been as a result of how we've integrated and how we've developed product for them. That's what's exciting. I think our teams are very excited about it. The fact that we've had people that have been here for decades engineering things one way and now are being asked to think about it differently and provide answers in a way that our customers expect us to. That's pretty cool. And I think all of us feel that way and are excited about the future of the business. And of course, you have the geopolitical challenges, the macroeconomic backdrops, but that's always existed. And so we tend to focus on the things that we can control and not worry about the things we can't, and then adjust to whatever it is going to change. And that's what we've been doing the last 6 or 7 years, of course. And we've probably never been stronger than we are today. It can be done. It just has to be done together.
Yes. So the future is bright, and the whole industry is going through a massive period of reinvention. And it isn't just about the product. It isn't just about how we make the product. It is about our operating system, how we make decisions, how we work together. And that all comes back to culture.
It does every day. And I think that, again, you're measured by your performance, right? Yes. Our plants are measured every day by our customers in terms of how you're performing. And it doesn't matter whether it's the spring, the summer, the winter, the fall, the variations that the climate has on your product and on your process. It really is up to you as the point of reference here with our customers to make sure everything is the way it's supposed to be. Yeah. And we have the same thing on the safety front. You talk about culture. There's no better way to me to invest in your employees than to send them home at night in the same condition that they arrived at work that morning. And so our focus is 0 accidents in every facility. We achieved that probably in over half our plants last year. We're even ahead of that pace this year. The total incident rates that we measure, our safety performance in each plant, is better than the world-class hurdle rate that's out there for manufacturers in our space. That's a we care, and that's a we do. And that's, I think, critical to making sure that the employees and the culture see results that do make sense. It just isn't about the P&L, which is critical in any company. It's about other things. And the safety performance is one of those areas that we tend to talk about. It's a total safety culture. It exists from the boardroom to the shop floor and everywhere in between. And it doesn't matter the country. The expectation is exactly the same, and the way we measure it, the way we teach it, the skills that we provide, the tools that we provide, the maintenance that we do, the equipment that we procure, the capital that we deploy in our factories isn't done without safety being the number one priority when we do it. And so if you're an employee here, those aren't hollow words. That's exactly what they see happening on a day-to-day basis. I suppose our plant managers probably go through at least a pair of sneakers a week, because the amount of time that they have to spend on our floor making sure that all of this stuff comes together the way it's supposed to, right? So you got to have the passion for performance shows up on the factory floor every single day. And that's, to me, the most important part of defining what the culture is at Cooper Standard.
Yeah. Let's take a turn into the personal realm, shall we?
Sure, why not?
What's the last book you read, Jeff?
The 21 Traits of Leadership probably was the last one that I read because I was preparing for. Yeah, I will tell you that personally learning and doing is something that I believe in wholeheartedly. And I tend to use reading more as a pastime than I do reading about leadership. Early in my career, I probably read one a week. And I guess that kind of changes as you go forward, but it doesn't mean that I'm not looking for better and smarter ways to think and to do. And one of the biggest parts of my job is looking around corners, right?
Yes, exactly.
And ultimately, we've talked about some things today that are like that. When you have an organization that's running fairly well and then you decide you're going to change it, and people look at you and say, what did we do wrong? And you didn't do anything wrong. But what we have to accomplish in the next 3 years, this won't allow us to do that. So we have to do it differently. And so that's what makes me tick. I spend an awful lot of time thinking about what's out there, what's coming, maybe what isn't as obvious to those that are involved in the day-to-day aspects of our business. But between our board, and they're a great board, and what my experience has provided me at this stage of my life, I tend to think about it that way.
How do you consume information? What's your preferred way to consume it? Are you a YouTube person? Are you a podcast person? Do you like to read books, blogs?
Yeah, I tend to really enjoy the human element of conversation.
Me too. That's probably why I'm a podcaster.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, how it works. I like, I guess, what's it called? Thinking out loud. I enjoy that aspect of it. I try not to walk into an issue or an environment, at least in this job, with the answers. I tend to walk in with more questions. And so I think that's how you learn.
Yeah.
And usually you find that there might not be one answer to the question, but there may have been 10 answers to a question. And within those 10 answers, you find the answer.
Yeah.
And it probably isn't the same sentence. And so I think that's probably how I learn. Look, the job is a decision-making job. So there isn't a way you really delegate the biggest decisions. But what you do delegate is the responsibility on a day-to-day basis for the leadership team to do their jobs and stay out of the way of that. And so I pride myself on being with them enough, but not too much, and providing some direction, but not all the answers. And you don't do that by writing memos, and you don't do that by hoping you got it right. You have to talk, and you have to have conversation with folks. And so I use the board for that. I sit on a board outside of Cooper Standard, so I enjoy the aspects of having conversations with folks that aren't necessarily part of my day job, if you will. There's many ways, and certainly reading a lot of things that are out there about the world we're living in and the challenges associated with that, and quote unquote, what the financial experts think I should think. I don't know. I get it from all points. But I also tell you that I enjoy the cultural diversity of our company and really the world. So I tend to think probably outside of most boxes. So I'm looking at it from whether it's in Asia, I'm thinking that day, or Europe, I'm thinking that day, or here. I think the answer isn't always where you were born, right? The answer has to be looked for, and you have to be willing to hear things that may not necessarily be what you think.
That's right.
And it may not necessarily be what you even wish for. But ultimately, your job is to find the right one, or at least one that works close enough.
Yeah.
And then have the courage to go do it. And we talk about courage a lot within our company, right? And usually when you're responsible for as many folks as our plant managers are, you find that courage to act or courage to not act is the way you ultimately define success. So it isn't always about the decision you made. You may decided to not do something, and that might be the best one you've ever made.
Yeah.
I think to be willing to open up and think differently and listen for answers around the world is, at least within the automotive industry, is important.
Yes, listening skills, critical.
Yeah.
Tell us something personal, Jeff. What do you do for fun? What do you do to relax outside of work?
Probably doesn't sound like relax, but I guess chasing my grandkids around has to be at the top of the list. They're at that age where you can go watch ball games, and I don't care if the ball went between their legs. Their father has to worry about that stuff anymore. I can cheer for all of it. So I enjoy that aspect. I grew up in a big family that was always together on Sunday afternoons, and so I suppose that for me is relaxing. I continue to enjoy that. I play some golf with my son from time to time, and I enjoy that. I don't get to play as much as I once did, and probably not as well as I did either, but I still enjoy the social interaction. And where can you spend 4 hours with somebody you care that much about.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's a beautiful way to close today. And I wish you all the very best in the next 65 years. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jan. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.